Malcolm Hoenlein is with us, Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. We call this the weekly update. Mr. Hoenlein, a pleasure to welcome you back to JM and the AM.
Good to be with you as always.
Appreciate that. And we'll get to the serious news, and there is plenty of serious news, but I did say that I would start with this. Not a quiz. I'm not quizzing you. I just found it funny and interesting. I'm in Israel this week, and I turn on, of course, Israeli television, as I tend to do, see what's happening, check out what's going on in terms of all the interesting news and the latest developments. And the craze all over the news channels this week, Malcolm, as you know, was the Likud primaries. You're familiar with that, right?
I've heard about it.
So now, these days, what's different about television these days as opposed to the old days? Now we've got this crawl at the bottom of the screen that tells you the headline they're talking about as they're talking about it, correct?
Right.
So this crawl has the words starting at the front of the line here at the beginning of the sentence: primaries Halikud. And I took a picture because I said to myself that you and I and many others until today have been curious, how do you spell primaries in Hebrew? And I wish our friend Mayor Weingarten would have been around this week for this one. I would have had a half hour on the air with him on this one. Anyway, I'm not quizzing you. I just want to get this out of the way because I told the listeners yesterday when I got back that I would do this. Primaries, Pei Resh, Yud Yud, Mem Resh, Yud Zion. And there it is. Malcolm, the question for you and for everybody has been answered.
Right. It shows how un-Israeli it is to have primaries. That when but I've seen it before. I've seen it in the Hebrew thing. But it is time that they came up with a word for it.
Nice. Maybe we could lead the charge on that campaign. Maybe that will be one that will actually be effective, since so many others, unfortunately, go by the wayside. There is a lot of serious news this week, folks, obviously, and we will start with a story that, again, captivates the Jewish heart around the world. And, Malcolm, I just want your reaction to it, because I'm sure it's similar to all of our reaction to it. The remains of Yehuda Katz were located, brought home for Kfura 44 years later. Those of us who went to Kerem B'Yavneh always felt a special connection. We have people here. Robert Katz is his first cousin. Yochi Herzog, president of Kedem Wine, is his first cousin. There's always been an American connection to all this, even stronger than with some of the other POW MIAs. And, of course, the funeral took place in the military section of Har HaZeitim of the Mount of Olives earlier this morning. Your reaction to this development regarding the burial now of Yehuda Katz?
Well, like the return of Bamel Frankel, that the returns of those who stood and defended Israel and who were true heroes and all but forgotten. I have to say that, as you know, we worked very hard with the families. Some of them literally lived in our offices for the whole time, and until their deaths, they continued the fight unyielding. And as you know, that was one of the reasons why I went to meet Assad in Syria. It was a primary reason, in fact, was to get the bodies and to get information on it, which is too long a story for now. But my heart breaks when I think about the parents. And if you knew how they literally devoted 24/7 to this campaign, because even Shabbatot, they would go and speak in shuls, they would go and speak other places. All the families so devoted to this, because, the Gemara tells us that a family has no menucha. They don't have any rest until their loved ones come to Kfura, until they actually get buried. And unfortunately, they died without ever getting that, at least that satisfaction of knowing that their children came back. And so it's especially meaningful. And, there are still, unfortunately, missing in action that have not been recovered. And Israel continues, no matter what, to search for them. And the idea that we leave no soldier behind continues. And it's an important moral message and commitment to those who are serving, and to the families, those who did serve. And so I'm glad that there's closure in part, and that people should go back and read about the Battle of Sultan Yaqub. We saw the three of them on a tank in Damascus. There were pictures published afterwards. And the Assad, of course, they all denied it. But this is really at least some a point of closure for them.
And as Malcolm refers to those who are still left behind, Ron Arad, captured in 1986, and obviously Eli Cohen, who was executed in 1965, and those remain high-profile people that still we hope their remains will be brought to Israel. I commented earlier, so, we always wonder about how the government officials and military heads in Israel, weigh the risk and reward when it comes to sending the boys into battle. Because, if you're the prime minister or anybody, with any type of decision making, or if you're in the military and you have to make these decisions, you would think, that you would think about it 1,000 times before actually deciding to send young men into battle, because, for obvious reasons, because of what both you as an individual and what you potentially could feel based on the results, and obviously what their families would end up going through, God forbid, et cetera, et cetera. And you wonder how seriously those who make these decisions take these decisions. And I think that this attitude of no man left behind, doing everything in our power to rescue Jew, alive or dead, anywhere in the world, state of Israel, military of Israel, uncovering every stone to try to find where these people are. I think it's sort of, I don't want to say justifies, but I think it sort of gives us a perspective on the attitude in general. It can't be, Malcolm, and I assume you agree with this, it can't be that a people and leadership that takes what happened this week so seriously, it can't be that they don't take the original decisions of sending those into battle just as seriously.
I remember seeing Rabin cry at a meeting he had with us when somebody asked him about the most difficult thing about being prime minister, and he said, making a decision to send boys to die. I won't go through the whole thing, but when you realize, he said, in the president of the United States can make a decision, but he never faces the families. He said, we see them every day. They're outside my house. They're on my street. I know many of them, and that it is a personal decision to have to send them and to have to face then afterwards the immediate ramifications, which is not true for the president. There might be some demonstrations once in a while, but in Israel, and for an Israeli leader, it's a decision that is for their own children too. And I think it's something that people forget, and we often let statistics replace the personal stories, and we should never let that happen. How each one of them is a hero, and the personal stories of them will help keep their presence alive, remind us who they are, and what they're doing for us, not just for them. And I will never forget Rabin's discussion of that, and seeing tears in his eyes about coming out, and every day when you walk out of your house or I get in my car, there are the families of somebody who served.
Yeah. And it's interesting because how many times have we, when there have been hostage situations, obviously way too common recently, and back in the Gilad Shalit episode, you'd walk by the prime minister's home, and there'd be protests nearby, and they would be continuous 24/7 around the clock, and not just protests, but a presence. And this is something that he saw every single time he walked in or out or drove in and out of his own home. So, yeah, you're right. There's something to be thought of in terms of that. All right, so the news of the week, the prime minister and Jared Kushner met in Jerusalem. There seems to be some discrepancy about what the results of the meeting was. Apparently, the theme was that Kushner wants, on behalf of the U.S., wanted Israel to take small steps in Gaza to test whether Hamas is generally committed to disarming or not. Do you have any type of definitive information about what Israel or Netanyahu's reaction was to the meeting with Kushner?
I do not. And they've played it really close to the vest, which is something that's very unusual. And I've had some discussions, but it's not information I can share because I can't confirm it. And I don't want to speculate like many do about these things. It's very sensitive. It's very important. This is not peripheral discussions. The fact that Jared, again, is playing a lead role is very clear. And I think he was there without Witkoff, although he was there with Tony Blair and the people, and Mladenov, who is the ostensible head of the Board of Peace, as well as another representative from the board. I don't think that Israelis have much confidence in the work of the board or its potential to carry out things, and the additional restrictions placed on Israel are very complicated. Israel is trying to accommodate, and you see the orders that were given, which are very troubling to a lot of people, not to take offensive action, and the statements of leaders, military leaders, saying that our role along the border in Gaza and stuff was defensive, and so that you could have 60 attempts in a little over a week to probe the Israeli defenses and to have people cross over, and Israel's soldiers given the orders not to shoot. I hope that we're not seeing a repetition of the past, but they are trying to be sensitive to the international order and to the blame for the failure, which is inevitable because Hamas will never live up to the agreement. Should not fall on Israel as it is today, no matter what. But we have to remember the lesson of October 7th, and that when they are testing things, they stole some equipment, engineering equipment, and other things, and for many Israelis, this is causing a lot of pain and a lot of concern. And that on the other hand, we have to recognize the position Israel is in, and the pressures that are being brought to bear.
I never even considered that. Is it possible? Because there was a report this week that Israel has pulled back somewhat, but done it quietly. Is it possible that they are adhering and Netanyahu is paying attention to Kushner and his demand, and at the same time doesn't want the Israeli public, who he wants voting for him, to know that there is a real pullback going on?
Well, I don't think anybody these days can dismiss the impact of the elections on decisions that are being made, especially because they are so close. I mean, there's no clear winner right now, and Likud has fallen behind somewhat. So that obviously is a major consideration. I think the people of Israel want to see the army be free to take the steps necessary to protect them, that they don't want to be put in a position again where, God forbid, people can run over. Remember, Hamas did not give up their weapons, and I don't believe that they intend to give up their weapons, and the international community can do what they want. Now they changed the rules, and if you look at the outcome of the discussions as reported, it includes turning over the weapons, but not to Hamas and not to storage houses that obviously they could raid at any time, but to the international force that would ultimately destroy those weapons. And it's the removal of the weapons. It's not just, some sham operation where they turn over the weapons, or and Hamas reclassifies, Kalashnikovs as personal weapons that people were allowed to keep, certain arms for their own protection. That the rules that are being set in the discussions, and obviously concessions that they got, there were 15 points, I think, in the agreement. To me, the most important was about the advance on the weapons, and that the principle that Israel does not withdraw until the disarmament is completed, or at least sufficiently underway for that to begin. Israel has insisted on it, rightly, that they cannot pull back, because we know from history exactly what happens and how manipulative they are. We have not seen new leadership emerge in Gaza at all that can take control and enforce this. The Board of Peace has not gotten the recruits. They have, I think, 100 from Morocco and one other country that pledged but you don't you have some training going on in Jordan for that, quote, police force that's supposed to govern Gaza, but we know that the tremendous number of weapons that have been uncovered tells you how much is there and how much is in private hands and how much is still in Hamas storage areas that have not been uncovered.
Are there supposed to be Americans in that force?
No, Americans are not in that force. From the beginning, President Trump said they would not be. There would be some Europeans, some Africans, and as I said, Morocco. They would be under the guidance of the border peace, and the deployments are still very vague about what would happen, but they're not there. They don't have the soldiers there. The people have not delivered on it, and so there are so many steps that have to be taken first.
Do you think a guy like Tony? You know Tony Blair. Do you think a guy like Tony Blair thinks it's a total waste of time? Like, what do you think he's thinking as all this is going on at the border peace, and he's sitting at these meetings?
I actually do know him, and I've worked with him in the past. I don't think he's playing that central role. He's good as a door opener, and he's good to go when you travel to the Arab countries, and he raises money prolifically for his own operations and activities, which I frankly haven't seen having a broad impact, but may well. But he's, as an international figure, respected, and certainly very few amongst them that Israel would engage with any degree of trust. So his role is symbolic, but also, I think, practical. And the fact, Jared, as I said, this played a more important role, and people should go back and look at the 15 points and the agreements that were reached, because they do meet some or many of Israel's concerns. But the fundamental thing is the problem, that Israel didn't agree to stop the targeted killings. It didn't agree to withdraw to the yellow line. It didn't agree to reduce the military presence, which ultimately would be something to be implemented. And I think Mike Huckabee was part of the discussions, as well as Mladenov, who's the Director General, former ambassador, and a very good friend of ours, and somebody who did speak and was Middle East envoy at one point. So you have to look at the different parts in that the fact that the weapons will not be initially transferred to the technocratic government, Palestinian government that's supposed to be created. So, and they will be transferred to the U.S.-led ISF forces for destruction. So these are all important parts of what really went on, but doesn't get reported very much.
Could you imagine if that destruction's on public display? I mean, that would be some.
Well, some of it would have to be, because I don't think the Israeli people will have confidence in it if they don't see it, because they know that all these.
Yeah, but I don't know if the enemy. I don't know if the enemy could tolerate it. I don't know if they'll be able to tolerate that.
Well, if they get paid for the weapons to get turned in,
they'll change their mind. It's America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program, heard on listener-sponsored digital radio around the world, the web at NachumSegal.com and the Nachum Segal Network, and, of course, the beloved NSN app. Malcolm Hoenlein's with us. We call this the weekly update. So on the subject of misdirection, because I brought it up regarding the, whether Israel's actually pulling back or not, could a similar thing be going on at the Strait of Hormuz? And what I mean is that as President Trump continues to what looks like stall through this process, and every week there's a new declaration about how he's handling it and how we're winning and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It does seem, and there are reports that the American military has been quietly operating a shipping corridor through the straits. The Navy is escorting tankers in and out. Millions of barrels supposedly, making its way. A lot of side deals going on, whether it's the Iranians or the Americans or Oman or the UAE are involved, et cetera, et cetera. Is it possible that the United States is just waiting this whole thing out? Because soon, if this continues, if what I just said is accurate, if this continues, soon it'll be irrelevant if Iran controls the strait.
Well, I don't think it'll become irrelevant, but I think you're making an important point. First of all, the exports, they admitted this week, are down to zero. And so a country that was dependent for its existence, its income, largely on its oil exports, had to acknowledge that it's been effectively curtailed. There was always some smuggling. There's always some little bits that get out. But the United States has done a job that, again, the media doesn't portray accurately. And the president is clamping down on the economic warfare, though many would have liked to see a more kinetic war, and finishing the job or at least taking sharper actions. They did fire on several boats during the week, and you had from Yemen, you had from others, which against UAE shipping. The UAE has cut off all of its trade. So beyond the energy trade, and income, the UAE was a major source. They have hundreds of Iranians with businesses and trading and stuff. All of that has stopped. The trade between UAE and Iran has been stopped and curtailed. Right. So the events at the in terms of the boycott, the United States stranglehold does work. It does tell you that they have control of the Straits of Hormuz. The threats against Oman coming from both the West and from Iran has sort of neutralized their role. There are shipping lanes that have been developed where the United States protects, and some ships go through, not stopping in Iran, not picking up Iranian oil, but transversing. You still have hundreds of ships in the area that did not get through during the short time that the straits were open, and the Iranians also limit ships, especially if they have American and Israeli ships. Related ships are banned, and they will certainly reactivate that. This causes belli. This is an international waterway, and as we remember from the Straits of Tiran story, those who are old enough to remember what led to the Six-Day War and to other conflicts when Israel's lifeline was cut off from the south, the story is the same here, that the Iranian efforts to control shipping and the idea that they would impose charges and other things. So it's not just a battle for now, it's also about the conditions that will obtain afterwards.
And when Trump goes ahead and declares the whole economic thing, and as you just said, this stranglehold on Iran actually could work, is he meeting, parenthetically, when Netanyahu comes here next month, is he meeting with the president? My point being, is this sufficient for the prime minister? Like, is Netanyahu going to, consider this very close to what Obama would have done, or will he say this is actually an effective strategy?
Again, remember, it's going to be a little over a month before the election, right, and people are going to want to see very strong statements. The prime minister will be here for a short time because it's between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. And, he has, and you have the several fronts, the issues that he has to consider, because Gaza will obviously be playing up very big and will be a big issue between the United States and Israel and the international community, and the continuing beating up of Israel on everything. And I think the meeting in Egypt, when Jared Kushner went and met with Hamas, people were very critical of it. He said that I think this was the second time there had been such contact. Right. But, I have to see that the president hasn't, has talked about endorsing a candidate in the election in Israel. Right. I don't think I don't think we should count on that. But a lot of things happened that were important. For one, one of the major sources of information in the background negotiations, which people, was not done publicly, but those who were involved, the backdoor channel through the regional government was eliminated, and I think the question of what's happening with the IRGC internally, there are pressures to close it. There are political pressures developing. between them, you see Iran's warnings to Oman and the acts of desperation. I think they are afraid, by the way, of an end to the war in some regard because, and Rouhani actually said this, the former president, because they think there'll be a civil war once the war is over in Iran internally, that a lot of the dissension and stuff will erupt again. It's not clear whether people, after the events of last January, when more than 50,000 were killed, as you know, and will they be willing to go into the streets? Because you can be sure the IRGC will be there and they'll be vicious. They're executing people continuously, yet you don't hear anything about that. No condemnations, no concern being expressed. Right. And the question is whether they shift the offensive in the coming weeks. There's a lot to be looked at on those fronts. Do they continue to try to activate their proxies? And then you have the parallel threat, which we've discussed here for years, trying to get people to understand that Turkey's more aggressive moves also are very relevant.
I'm sure that'll be a topic if he does meeting if the Prime Minister meets with Trump. But just can we go back for a second to with the Straits of Hormuz and what you confirmed, after I asked you about the reopening of some of the channels, etc. Many of the Israel critical people, especially those that are, accusing Israel of causing this whole conflict and bringing the United States into it, they continue to cite the shortage of energy that's imminent for the United States. We've gone through our backup supply. Prices are going to be double what they are now. If it's $4 a gallon, it'll be $8 a gallon, et cetera, et cetera. Based on how you responded to this, it doesn't look like any of this is really going to affect the supply of American oil, of oil that America needs. Am I right about that or not? Is this completely alarmist and false that there's actually going to be a shortage down the road?
So, first of all, America is energy independent. America is a net exporter of energy. So America itself does not have to be affected. It means we can't sell on the market, then the market goes up, and oil companies tend to then take advantage of that circumstance where the international price is up and that they can charge more. But the fact is that the supply is there. It is true that our strategic reserve is at the lowest point in 40 years, I think. And I think that and we can't look and see Europe this winter go into a winter with shortage of gas, and people will be freezing just like they're suffering this summer from the extreme heat, and the needs for Ukraine, etc. And Russia, which has sufficient oil for itself and is the biggest net exporter in the world, not being able to market its stuff is certainly selling as much as it can on the black market. But the Europeans are dependent on Russian gas also and oil. So you have a lot of factors that will come into play as they face a cold winter. And so for the United States, it's a secondary thing, but a lot of what we buy, the byproducts are made with petroleum products from abroad. And in the manufacturing plastics of so many things that are have components or are dependent upon petroleum supplies. So it does affect things we buy. It does affect the global market and the demand. And, the United States can't just gluttonously continue to consume if the market's dry.
Nonetheless, COVID caused more of a shortage than this war is causing. I'm talking about in general with the types of supplies you just referred to.
Well, with the resumption of fracking and using our domestic resources and exploiting it, we have plenty of energy for Americans and for some of our allies.
Back to the primaries with a pay for a moment. So Likud is threatening legal action over these subsidized flights. So what's the idea? The idea is that some people in Israel want to pay Israelis who live abroad to come back and vote. Is that outrageous in your opinion? Is this something that's common? What is this all about?
So they don't pay them as far as we know. We know they paid for their airplane tickets, and they're encouraging people to sponsor a flight for somebody to come. I think that it's for people living abroad. if they're not diplomats and they're not serving in organizational or official roles, there are a lot of people who believe that there shouldn't be extended privileges, although many countries do provide voting booths at official sites so that their citizens abroad can participate. Israel does not allow people who are in official roles, so they're saying we will pay for them to come because most of those abroad would be likely to vote center, left, and in the past, this is not the first time it's been done. It has happened in past elections. Remember, this is the first time a government in, 40 years lasted the full 4 years.
That's right.
So, we don't have that much experience recently, but I know people who are involved in organizing some of these efforts. I have a lot of questions about it. It's certainly ideologically driven. It's not just a democracy, raising the flag of democracy to give everybody a chance to vote. Many people do, and they used to for many years, fly back to vote, which is a perfectly legitimate thing to do. If you're a citizen, come back, you're there. But the idea that you subsidize it and you pay for people to come has raised a lot of opposition, and a lot of people feel that it distorts democracy. But it's there are a lot of Israelis abroad, and so there are flights that are being organized. And again, this was done before, but in truth, the numbers were very small. The impact was very minimal.
We might be able to fact check this somehow, but if I would have asked you on October 8th of 2023 if this government would have remained for the full 4-year term, what would you have said?
No chance.
Isn't that funny?
But I would have said that in 22. I mean, when they got elected, there was no chance, because they didn't. It hasn't happened. And you saw Netanyahu governed, the governments he ran were also short-lived in the fact that they sustained against all the predictions. I don't understand enough of Israeli politics to ever be able to predict anything.
I wonder
about what they say.
But I wonder if it's because of the war or coincidentally it has nothing to do with the war, that just the government, just because of the numbers, because of, the precariousness of the situation, it just survived. Do you think it's all war related?
I think it is related to the war. It's always a factor, and you say, you don't want to divide the country during the war. But I think that there are other factors. Number one, the weakness of the opposition. You don't have a strong leader. You don't have somebody who really rallies and can show that they can win, 61 seats yet. They come close, but they haven't. But it would have to be in coalitions, and a lot of people believe those coalitions won't really hold, and that there'll be a lot of shifting of people, once the election, or even before the election. And we've seen, people starting these new parties. You have a whole slew of small parties being created, whether it's just to position the leaders because they weren't going to get in winnable positions, let's say on the Likud list, because the Likud primary this past week, they have 140,000 members, only half turned out. And of the 25 slots, 8 were were given to Netanyahu to populate. So they were really voting over 17 slots altogether. And then, of course, you had national elections parallel that, which are independent of this, and they elect members of Knesset on a national scale. So you have a very uncertain and shaky political bases across the board, and with the movements that are taking place, and as you get closer, it will become much more heated amongst those opposing Netanyahu, and as well as within the Likud, for those who didn't get winnable positions, including some well-known names.
But the other stat, well-known names who are accused of being aligned with the Haredi community, or others?
No, others who just didn't make the cut.
The other statistic that everyone keeps talking about from the primaries with a pay is last time was 58%, and this time only 53%. Do you think there's a lack of enthusiasm for the Likud party compared to the way it was 4 years ago?
Absolutely. And I think for Netanyahu personally, and that there comes a point, after all the years, even supporters, feel that sometimes change in democracy is healthy. But there's no leader that compares to him, I think, now that has arisen. So people there's nobody around whom they can rally.
Yeah,
if you had some strong personality, you would see greater dissent. But on the other hand, there are people who still have great confidence in Netanyahu and see him as the leader. And I think some of his actions in the last days can be interpreted in that light, that he has to project a certain image and the protection of the people right now. I think the question of building their confidence and who can assure that their security will be maintained. October 7th still is a cloud over everybody and deep scars.
August 21st, I will tell you who the dark horse is. Lieberman. Today it's Lieberman. Today he would get more votes than people expect. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's my impression.
If you would have asked me who is a pivotal figure today, I would have said Lieberman. And not because he's going to increase his vote so much. I don't think that's the issue. The issue is that he could be pivotal in getting to 61 votes, and that he's a very shrewd operator. And maybe with Eisenkot, they can work out a rotation. They can work out something. But I think right now he is a pivotal figure.
Yeah, someone made an interesting comment to me this week that we know, obviously, national security was always the number one issue and continues to be. But now domestic issues are seeping back into the Israeli electoral scene, which makes sense because it's been getting very little attention, so to speak, for the last couple of years. And if that's the case, then but if that's the case, many people think that Lieberman will deal with those situations better than Netanyahu. So see what happens.
Yeah, but it's very divisive issues right now. And that's the greatest danger is when Israel's divided internally, the Haredi issues, other issues that are coming to the fore. And you need somebody who can be unifier. So Eisenkot and others are presenting themselves as those who can build a coalition. Gilad Erdan, others who are newer to the scene are saying that they can bring together different factions. I'm worried about the impact of this, both post-election as well as now. And I think calls for unity that we've heard are not resonating that well because of the deep resentments that have been created. And I think the media has to play a more responsible role than they do. They generally haven't in Israel, but I think now under these circumstances, they really have to.
Hopefully they will. Thank you so much for all your time. Have a wonderful Shabbos. We'll speak, please God, next week.
God willing, to have a great Shabbos, and we have to talk about what happened with Turkey this week, and we have to talk about the implications still of the spreading influence of the Pakistani-Saudi-Turkey deal. So we have a lot to talk about next week.
Well, we have something even more important to talk about. You have your first Sabrala in the family.
That is the biggest simcha, and the first Sabra, great-grandchild for us, and grandchild and child, born to our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren who live in Ramot Beit Shemesh. He's an attorney, Mayor Stein, for those who know the Steins who live here in Brooklyn, but he's the first to have made Aliyah. And she gave birth this week to a baby girl, which is their third child. And it's a true simcha and a milestone in the history of our family. It's something that previous generations wanted and tried to do during the war and before the war. In fact, my parents were both in Hachshara and had the singular goal of getting to then Palestine. And, of course, Hitler had other plans in mind. So this is a huge simcha for us and something to celebrate.
Wow, amazing. Mazal Tov, pretty incredible. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, Friday, 7:40 a.m. Eastern Time for the weekly update here at JM the AM.